Okay, so we're gonna start on the front of your 45, 45, 90. So again, if you want to just like push aside your 30, 60, 90s, we'll get to that later. So you should have two papers that say 45, 45, 90 on it. Okay, so if we're classifying this triangle, obviously it's a right triangle. It tells us that. What makes this a right triangle? What makes it a right triangle? The 90 degrees, right? And then if we were classifying it by its angles, I see that I have two what angles, if they're both the same? What do I call those angles? They're the same. What's the word for the same in geometry? Starts with a C. No? Congruent. Do you remember that word? Congruent means the same. So we have two congruent angles, which means this is what type of triangle. This is kind of review stuff. When I have two congruent angles and two congruent sides, that's called a what triangle? Anybody remember? I heard it over there. Isosceles. So we can write that down. Should have said this before we started the video, but that's okay. The EOC is going to be within the first week or two of May. We're thinking May 8th and 9th. So like think about what today is. Today's the 2nd of April, so that's like 4 to 5 weeks away. So we're kind of in review mode as well. Okay, so I know isosceles, we have two 45-degree angles, two congruent angles. If I draw arrows across from those two angles, that's where my congruent sides are going to be. Okay, so in an isosceles triangle, I have two congruent angles, two congruent sides. So these are called special right triangles because there's a special pattern that we can memorize for these. And we use a method called the tic-tac-toe method because it is literally a tic-tac-toe board. It's just a way to kind of help us solve these. But this is just something we have to memorize. So the pattern for a 45, 45, 90, I know that these are congruent sides, so we can write that as x. Okay, so like whatever length this side is, that side will be exactly the same. So that's represented by x and x. Haley, are you ready? Okay. And then across from the 90 degrees is going to be x square root of 2. Can you guys say x square root of 2? People were having issues saying like the square root of. That's how I say that. X square root of 2. So my pattern, I'll already write it over here. Across from your 45, so our tic-tac-toe just lines that up for us. Across from our 45s are x. Across from 90 is x square root of 2. Okay, so that is something that we have to memorize. It's not given to us on the EOC. So just one more lovely thing to have to memorize there. Okay, but we can apply that pattern to any 45, 45, 90 triangle. So before we start doing some examples in your foldable, get out that little half sheet that says 45, 45, 90 in the top. Can I move from this page? Okay, so we're just going to kind of practice because we're not super used to radicals or a square root symbol. That's a radical sign or a square root. Because we're not super used to that, we're just going to practice doing some numbers here. And I'm just making up some numbers, so I'm just kind of giving you random values. So we're going to start with 8, 7, and 6. So I'm just giving you a side length here. Okay, so in a special right triangle, you'll be given always one side, and you can use that one side to figure out your other sides. So what do we notice about these two columns? What do we notice about these two columns? They're the same, right? So whatever this column is, we can go ahead and copy that same thing down here. So that's going to be 8, 7, 6 as well. So the 45, 45, 90s are definitely easier because we have that repeating column there, or the repeating side. Okay, and then whatever our x value is, we see it's just like tacked on to the front of this square root of 2. So we're just going to plug in whatever our x value is on the outside. So this will be 8 square root of 2. 8 square root of 2. Okay, so our next one, Ethan, what would our next one be? My x value 7. What would my?
7.
Very good. 7 what? Say.
Square root.
Very good. 7 square root of 2. Perfectly said. And then I'm actually up top going to fill in. I know across from my 45s are the x, and then this would be across from the 90. So you do want to remember that pattern. Okay, so go ahead and fill in your last row there. These are our nice, easy examples. And I'll walk around and make sure you got that. Good. Good. Okay, so it definitely gets a little more challenging than that. Those are our nice, easy examples where we just plug that number on the outside. So 6 square root of 2. The next one I'm going to give you is the square root of 3. Square root of 3. So we haven't done like a ton of practice with radicals, but we know that this next column is going to be what? The square root of 3. It's going to be exactly the same. Okay, and then this is actually just a multiplication sign in between. So that's x times the square root of 2. If it's just a number, we can stick it on the outside. But here, we're going to actually be multiplying the square root of 3 times the square root of 2. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so what you have to know about radicals is you can only multiply like terms. So these are both on the inside of a square root, so those are like terms. So we can only do outside numbers with outside numbers, inside numbers with inside numbers. So we're going to keep it under a square root, and we're just going to multiply those two numbers together. So this becomes the square root of what? 6. We're just multiplying the square root of 3 times the square root of 2. Okay, that is its most simplified form there. I'll give you an example in a second of one that we could simplify here, but we're not going to be doing that a ton today. Okay, next one is going to be 5 square root of 7. 5 square root of 7. Okay, Leanna, what would our next row be, our next column? Good, and good job saying it correctly. 5 square root of 7. And now I'm doing 5 square root of 7 times what? Times the square root of 2. Okay, this is a good example of where we don't have all like terms. What are the only two terms here that are like terms? Maybe turn to your partner and tell them what you think. Like, which ones can we multiply here, do you think? Which ones do you think? Okay, Alicia, what did you and Andrew think? Good, so the square root of 7 and the square root of 2. Those are both the numbers that are on the inside. So I'm just going to keep that 5 on the outside. Okay, we're not going to do anything with it. We're just going to keep it stuck on the outside. And then this would become the square root of what? 14. Okay, again, the square root of 14 is its most simplified form. So I'll give you one to try on your own. Let's do 2 square root of 5. 2 square root of 5. And I'll pause here so I can walk around and answer questions. Okay, so 2 square root of 10 was our answer there. I'm going to show you an example of one that we would have to simplify. So the square root of 6, 14, and 10 are all in its most simplified form. I'm going to give you an example one that is not. Okay, so the way that we know that they are simplified is that I have no factors that are perfect squares. Does anyone know what a perfect square is? Yeah, so an example of a perfect square would be like 4, 25, 16, 9, 36, 64, 49. So like they're all numbers that we can take the square root of and get like a perfect number out of it. So I know factors of 12 are what? What are my factors of 12? 2 and 6. Neither of those are a perfect square. So we're looking for one that is a perfect square. 3 and 4. Which number? So I can change this now into the square root of 3 and the square root of 4. Which one is a perfect square here? 4. What is the square root of 4? 2. So that becomes a 2. So I kind of pull out that 2 on the outside, and I'm left with the square root of what? 3. So that is how we would simplify a radical. You won't have to do that a ton today. There's a few examples on your prep work that you can do this to. But just know like you're looking for perfect squares that can be pulled out. But all these numbers that I'm giving you are already simplified. Okay, so those are like our medium level, and then the most difficult ones, I'm going to do 3 square root of 2 here. 3 square root of 2. Okay, I know our next column, Haley, is going to be what? Very good, 3 square root of 2. And then our last one, we're doing 3 square root of 2 as my x value, and we're multiplying it by what? Square root of 2. Do you guys see how these are repeating each other? Okay, so this is why these are the, they're not difficult, but they're the most challenging maybe. So I'm going to bring this off to the side over here. My like terms are both under the square root, so this will become the square root of what? The square root of 4. What is the square root of 4? 2. So do you notice that when I multiply a square root times itself, it just deletes that radical sign? Do we see that? So the way that I do them, I never really write the square root of 4. I just go automatically to the 2. So like the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 would be what? 3. It's the square root of 9, which is just 3. So you're just like deleting that square root sign. If I did the square root of 5 times the square root of 5, that would just be what? 5. So those are little shortcuts here. So since I have the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, that just equals what? 2. So that is 2, and then this number gets pulled down here, and those just get multiplied together. So this is just 3 times 2, which is what? 6. Okay, I'll do one more with you before I let you do one on your own. Let's do 4 square root of 2. 4 square root of 2. Hector, what's the next column?
4 square root of 2.
Very good. And then we're doing 4 square root of 2 times the square root of 2. Okay, I'm going to bring down my 4, and I'm just going to multiply it by what? 2. Square root of 2 times itself is just 2. And 4 times 2 gives me 8. So you'll end up with whole numbers here. So I'm going to give you one more, and then I'll pause the video while you guys are doing this one so you can ask questions. So we should have gotten the square root of, 7 square root of 2 and 14 there. So we're just doing 7 times 2. Just kind of deletes that square root sign. Okay, so that's just kind of like our warm-up to actually try our first example. So you can open your foldable now. Like there's really not a point to the foldable other than it just looks cute when it's all folded up. So open up to example 1. Okay, and then first thing we want to notice, foldable, sorry, did I say folder? So our first one, how do I know for sure this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle? Okay, I have a 45 and a 90. How do I know for sure that one's 45? Hector? Very good. All together, these three have to equal 180. Do you guys remember the name of that theorem? Triangle sum. Good, triangle sum. So that for sure tells me that this is going to be 45 there. So first thing I want to do is do my, I'm going to make this smaller so I don't run out of room. Do my little tic-tac-toe chart. So we're doing like our first real example here. Some people will get to the point where you don't need to do this, but I think for like the first few times, and I always do this, some people always do the tic-tac-toe, but it's just a really good way to kind of start. So we have to have our pattern memorized, so try without looking at your sheet to fill in like your X, what. We have to have that memorized. Good. Don't put your X on the outside. You can double check with the front or your little side sheet if you can't remember. But it should be X, what? Very good. X square root of 2. So across from the 45s are the X, across from the 90s, X square root of 2. So we have that set up. Now we need to figure out where to put the 8. So do you guys see they gave you one side, which is 8? Okay, so in order to do that, I'm going to draw my arrow straight across. It's across from what angle?
45.
The 45. So wherever I see 45, I'm going to plug in that 8. So this is our nice, easy example. A little happy man. Nice, easy example. Okay, so across from my 45s are going to be my congruent sides, which are 8. And then how would I figure out that last column? This is just what we practiced. If my x value is 8. Very good. We just plug that number in on the outside. So 8 square root of 2 is going to be right across from our 90. So I'm going to draw my arrow across from 90. And that would be 8 square root of 2. Okay, so at this point we have to figure out what side is what. So ED is which one? ED is 8, and then DF is 8 square root of 2. So that's our nice, easy example. Questions there? Okay, go ahead and set up a tic-tac-toe for the next one, example 2. Okay, that just makes sure we have our pattern memorized too. I just like it for at least the lesson. You'll get to a point where you might not need to use it anymore. Okay, and I want to see if you can fill in the 15 square root of 2 in the right column. So we want to draw our arrow straight across, and it should go under which one? Just think that to yourself and write it down. So where do I plug in that 15 square root of 2? Good. Good. Okay, draw your little chart again. Whoa. Okay, so I should plug it in under what number? 90. It's straight across from the 90-degree angle. So I'm going to plug exactly what it tells me right into the 90. Okay, this is another easy example. These line up perfectly, right? X square root of 2, 15 square root of 2. So my x value would just be the number on the outside. So what's my x value? 15. So we're working backwards there to get our x value. Okay, so that's our nice, easy example there. So across from both of my 45s, and I should have, first step should be filling in my other angle there. So I'm going to draw my arrows straight across. Those are going to be my congruent sides, and they'll both be 15. So these are both 15. Okay, we're working backwards there, so you can also think about it like we're dividing by the square root of 2 to get back to x. So we just took out that square root of 2. Okay, go ahead and set up for the next one.
I have a question.
Yes.
I already have
This one?
the next one.
Next one, okay. So I'll give you guys a second to fill out your tic-tac-toe with this one. First thing I should do is fill in my other angles. So fill in your other 45 there. X square root of 2. Right, I'm going to use that as like an example on the board because a lot of people were doing that yesterday too.
Can I ask you that?
But I want you to think about it yourself first. I don't want to just tell you. Because you'll see what you did in a second. Okay, so draw your arrow across to the angle. So it's across from which one you get. So wherever you see 45, that's where you're going to plug in. So it's root 2. Okay, I'm going to put up an example that is incorrect, but I want you to tell me what I did wrong here. I want you to tell me what I did wrong here, because a lot of people were doing that yesterday also. Kylie?
That's not across from a 90.
Good. This side is across from what angle? The 45. So we need to plug it in underneath the 45. So it does have that square root of 2 value, but it doesn't mean it goes with the 90. We just have to follow the picture. So that's 7 square root of 2 wherever we see 45. And then what are we doing in the last column here? Good. So my x value, 7 square root of 2 times the square root of 2. So we're just following our pattern there. We have this one on our little half sheet, so you should be able to figure that out. We're going to bring down our 7, and then what's the square root of 2 times the square root of 2? 2. Thank you for listening to the question. And then 7 times 2 would give me my answer of 14. Okay, so once we have that chart filled out, we can go back to the picture. I know across from my 45 is going to be 7 square root of 2, and then across from 90 will be what? Across from 90 will be 14. So you're just reading your chart. Go straight down and read your chart. Okay, that's the hypotenuse, so my longest side. So BC would be which one? 7 square root of 2, and AC would be 14. So it's kind of like a little puzzle at the end. Okay, so I'll let you do example 5 and 6 on your own, but we're going to do 4 together, so if you can fill that one out. This one's a little bit tricky. X square root of 2. And I'm going to show you another incorrect example. But go ahead and fill out your chart for this one. Good. So that's good. Okay, so I just want to see that you're filling in your chart like correctly. So where would I put that value? Where are we going to put it? And then I think it would be smart to have your, oh, well, you already did it. You wrote it correct there, not it. Yeah, she said. Oh, yay. Okay, so where would I put 22? Good, and make sure you have like, I take those out. Yay. I just want to see that you plugged in the 22 in the correct spot. Are you sure that I did, Andrew? Good, Joseph. Okay. Okay, so this is what I saw people doing yesterday and a few people today, but not as many, so that's good. I saw a lot of people doing this. Why is that incorrect? I put it in the correct spot, right? It's across from 90, but
It's not.
it's only supposed to say what? 22. So I don't want to make up any values there. Some people saw that square root of 2 and thought I need to write the square root of 2 in. You write whatever they give you. So the 22 goes there. In the example up top, I said that when we're working backwards, we're actually doing what here? When we're working like from the 45s over here, we're multiplying. When I go backwards, I actually did what? I divided by the square root of 2. So that is what we're doing here. We have the x square root of 2. We're going backwards to find x. So I'm actually taking this 22 and dividing it by the square root of 2 to go back to x. Is everyone okay with like that? Why we're dividing? Okay, so if you have your x square root of 2, we're going to divide to go back to x. So, do you guys want the long way or the shortcut here? Yes? Okay. So when we're dividing by the square root of anything, we divide by the number on the inside. So what is 22 divided by 2? 11. And then we take that square root of 2 and plug it back in. So this is going to be 11 square root of 2. So that's just our little shortcut there. So that is my x value, 11 square root of 2, for both of my values. And that will get a little easier when you practice again. Okay, so we actually don't really have to go back to our picture here. I know we were looking for both of my 45s, so these will be exactly the same. 11 square root of 2 and 11 square root of 2. Anyone need me to go over that shortcut again? So we divide by the number on the inside, and then you're going to add that square root back in.
Okay, so you see, for example, 3, how we get 7 in the square root of 3 times 2. Why do we not? I said, you see, for example, 3, how we did 7 in the square root of 2 times 2. But like for this one, you said like don't multiply 22.
Yeah. So the difference was, on this example, we started with my x value, and we're trying to find my x squared root of 2 value. So we needed to multiply here. Since we started with the x squared root of 2 value, we have to divide to work backwards. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and let you guys try example 5 and 6 on your own, and I'll walk around if you have questions. Okay, so double check those answers with yours. And we're going to move on to 30, 60, 90. So get that stuff out. So we have to do it all over again with a different pattern. So same whole process, but different pattern. 30, 60, 90 are, I think, a little bit more challenging than the 45s, just because we have all different patterns now. So on the front of your little sheet, I'm going to draw your tic-tac-toe. And the pattern for 30, 60, 90 is x square root of 3, and 2x. So a whole new pattern here. Okay, so I'm going to color code this across from 30. So I'm going to draw my arrow across from 30. I'll give you a second to write that down. Across from 30 is x. Across from 60 is x square root of 3. And across from 90, our box, is 2x. Okay, the only additional thing to notice here is that the 30 and 60 can switch places, so you always want to be aware of where your 30 is. So now, across from my 30 is x. Across from 60 is x square root of 3. And the hypotenuse didn't change here. That's 2x. So again, these have to be memorized because they're not given to you on the EOC. So there's not a great way to memorize them, but it kind of helps me to remember that the square root of 3 is going to go with the 30, 60, 90 because there's a 3 in 30. That kind of helps me with the square roots at least. Can I move on from this page? Okay, so we're going to go to that little half sheet and practice some of these. So I'll give you an easy example first. Let's do 6 and 5. Oops. And I'm going to write 30, 60, 90 just up above those numbers. Okay, so we don't have a repeating column anymore, so it's not as nice to us. But we know that that number just gets stuck on the outside here, so this would become what? Joseph, what would this middle column be? So we're going to plug that 6 on the outside, so this would be 6, and then how do I say the rest?
Square root of 3.
Very good, 6 square root of 3. Okay, and then we want to notice we're doing 2 times x. Which one is my x value here? 6. So we're doing 2 times 6, which is just what? 12. Okay, so make sure you're going all the way back to x and not using that middle column for 2x. Okay, go ahead and try that next one, please, if you haven't already. You got that little sheet? Aw. Well, forget it. Okay, Angelina, what's the middle column here? Very good. And Andrew, what's the last column?
2 times 5.
Good. Which is good. Okay, so those are our easy examples. I'm gonna give you a little bit trickier ones. So let's do 2 square root of 2. I heard someone yesterday say 40 something. I don't actually remember. I don't know. Got like 2 months to go. Crazy. Okay, so now we're doing our x value. So 2 square root of 2, and we're multiplying it by what? We're multiplying it by the square root of 3. So this middle column means we're multiplying by the square root of 3. Okay, we can only do like terms here, so the ones under the radical. So that becomes the square root of what? 6. Good. And then that 2 just gets stuck on the outside. So 2 square root of 6. Questions with that? You can only do like terms. And then the last one, we're doing 2 times our x value. So I'm doing 2 times, what's my x value? 2 square root of 2. So I'm just going to write it out. Are we okay with that? So I can only do like terms, so only the numbers on the outside. Yeah, Carly? Oh, sure. Very good. So she multiplied these 2 together and got 4. And then if we don't have anything to combine it with, we just stick it on the other side. So 4 square root of 2. Okay, so I'll give you an example to try. Let's do 10 square root of 7. 10 square root of 7. And I'll walk around. I'll pause it here if you have any questions. Okay, so these we had 10 square root of 3 times the square root of 3. I'm going to show you both ways that I saw people doing this, which was fine. So 10 square root of 3 times square root of 3 becomes 10 square root of 9. I saw some people doing it that way, which is fine, except for it's not simplified. What is the square root of 9? 3. So we end up just doing 10 times 3, which is 30. Okay, the shorter way is just to know when I multiply a radical by itself, it just cancels out that radical sign. So I'm left with 10 times 3, which is 30. So that's the quicker way there. And then our last one, we were doing 2 times 10 square root of 3. So we can only combine the outsides. So it's 20 square root of 3. Okay, and then same or similar thing down here. We're doing 7 square root of 3 times the square root of 3. So that is just 7 times what? Square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is just 3. Not the square root of 3, it's just 3. So that's 21. And then our last one would be 2 times 7 square root of 3. So we end up with 20 square root of 3. Oh, wrong, sorry. 14 square root of 3. 14 square root of 3, sorry. Any questions like with this middle column? Why I just multiplied it by 3?
I don't understand.
So the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, right? If you left it like that, it would be counted wrong because it's not simplified. The square root of 9 is just 3. So like the way I'm doing it is just skipping that step. I know if it's multiplied by itself, it's just the number on the inside. So that's why I'm kind of like skipping that and just doing 7 times 3. You can do it the longer way. That's also fine. You just have to simplify it. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to example 1 here. So I'm going to fill out my chart, except first thing I should do is fill in that 30. Okay, so this is 30, 60, 90. Anybody have the pattern memorized? X square root of 3 and 2x. So remember the square root of 3 goes with the 30, 60, 90. Okay, so next thing I need to do is draw my arrow across from 8. And where should I plug in that 8 value? Across from 30. So I'm going to plug it in right there. This is our easy example, so I'll let you go ahead and fill in the rest of your chart here.
What is 2 times
3. So we're gonna,
Okay, I got 8 square root of 3 and 16, and then from there, we should go back to the chart and figure out what side goes where. So across from 60 is 8 square root of 3, and across from 90 is what? 16. So ED is which one? And then DF would be 16. That's our easier example there. Let's look at our next one. X square root of 3, 2x. Where do I plug in that 14? Logan. Where do I plug in the 14? Under what number? Can you see? 14 is across from what angle? Yeah, but the 30, 60, or 90. Look at your paper. What angle is it across from? Yeah, so I'm going to plug it in right underneath the 90. Okay, I can fill in my 30 here. So this is where I'm working backwards. So if I have my 2x value, how do I go back to find my x value? Divide by 2. So we're going to divide this number by 2 and get what? 7 for my x value. Are we okay with that? Writing what I'm writing? And then that should help us figure out our middle column. So if my x is 7, what would my middle column be? 7 square root of 3. So again, if you're working backwards to find x, that's when you're going to be dividing by something. If you have x, that's where we're plugging it in. So we were going backwards, so we divided by 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and figure out, I'll let you do this. So draw your arrow across from 30, draw your arrow across from 60, and figure out which one goes where. Fill in your 30 there. And then draw your arrows across. you can be working on if you're reading on the rest of it. Start with the information. So start with 30, 60, 90, 20. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this right?
Okay, so draw your arrow across from 30 and now 7.
Oh.
But I didn't know.
Yes, you did. Don't lie. Just right now. Oh. Yeah.
So in
Alright. I'm already at 4.
So it's 10. Okay, you should have gotten 7 and then 7 square root of 3. Looking at our next one, this one was another pretty simple example. Again, this is not like you have to do the tic-tac-toe method. I just think it kind of helps the learning process when we're lining everything up. So, first thing I want to do is fill in my what angle here?
60.
The 60 is missing, so I'm going to fill in that 60 degrees there. First step of this problem, I want to figure out where to plug in my side. So I'm going to draw an arrow across from my side, and I'm going to plug it in where? Underneath the 60, very good. So the 9 square root of 3 goes right underneath 60. Okay, when they're nice lined up like this, I know that those are the square roots of 3, so my x value is just the number on the outside. So what's my x value? 9, so just that number on the outside. So there's my x value. And then what do I do to find 2x? 2 times 9, which is 18. 2 times 9 is 18. So then I'll let you figure out which one goes where. So those are all nice, easy examples. You should be okay with example 4 as well. It's a little bit trickier. So that one should just be 9. I don't remember off the top of my head. Okay, so that's square root of 3. That's square root of 3, which is 3. 2 times the square root of 3. Don't use that one. You have to go back to x. Which one do you get? So just draw your arrows. The one across from 30. Well, that one.
With that answer. Oh. This one, yeah.
I don't understand how you
Why you?
How are we doing on this example 4?
Alright. You go back. It's just gonna be so you have to put this. Oh, really? Oh my goodness. Don't believe me.
Okay, track the word please. This is what your setup should look like. Okay, across from 30 was my square root of 3, so I just plug in whatever you see is what you plug in. Don't try to like assume that it goes here because there's a square root of 3. Just whatever's given to you, plug it in. So that is my x value, so I'm just plugging in everything where I see x.
Miss Molly,
Yes,
can I have Haley to check out, please?
Haley, Jordan?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, so wherever we see x, we're now plugging in the square root of 3. So my middle column is the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. What is the square root of 3 times itself? Just 3, right? So that is just 3. And then here's where I caught some people doing 2 times 3. This is 2 times my x value, which is what? What's my x value? Square root of 3. Are those like terms? They're not. One's on the outside, one's on the inside, so they just get stuck together. So 2 square root of 3. Questions with that? Okay, so that's a great example of when it just cancels out that square root. So across from 60 is going to be 3. Across from 90 is 2 square root of 3. So JL is 2 square root of 3. KL is 3. Okay, I'm going to keep going with you on these because they get the most difficult ones are on the back. So go ahead and set up however you set up for these. Go ahead and set up number 5. We have 2 more. Then we're done. And then you have retreat. Okay. Keon, where do I plug in the 12? Underneath 60, good. I'm gonna fill in my 30. Do I have my x value, or do I have to find my x value? I have to find it, right? So I'm working backwards here, so what am I doing? Dividing by whatever's here. So we're dividing by what? Not 3. The square root of 3. Different. So we're doing 12 divided by the square root of 3. So this is where we do our shortcut. Anyone remember what we do here? We're going to start by dividing by just the number, right? So what's the number on the inside? 3. So we're going to do 12 divided by 3, which gives me 4. And then what do we have to do now? Good. Add back in the square root of 3. So that is my x value. Are we okay with that? Maybe? That's just the shortcut. And then now I'm doing 2 times my x value, so I'm just going to write that out. 2 times, what's my x value? 4 square root of 3. What are my only terms here that I can multiply? 2 and 4. There's the numbers on the outside, so that becomes 8 square root of 3. So I'll let you figure out which one goes with what side. Okay, so what's FU? 4 square root of 3. And then across from 90, FT would be 8 square root of 3. That one was a little tricky. You think they did that on purpose?
Maybe.
Yeah. I didn't make this. Okay. Last one. Did you guys already do this one? Did you already do this one?
Yes.
No.
I'm gonna give you a second to try this one.
I did.
But maybe I'll also try it with you. You guys can do this. The setup is always the same, but then it's just figuring out what do I do to work backward. I think it helps if you write out the X there for you to. Year 2016 is ahead. It's too easy.
I'm done.
Some of y'all are killing it. Good. So that's 2x. So we're backwards.
So 3, and then I did 3 and 3.
So we can only do the number. You're trying to do 6 backwards. Do 30. So that's your
2 times
Oh,
something
look at you.
equals
Look at you.
now we're doing
Oh, you did it.
we're doing 2 square root of 3
divided by
times
Oh, well, I didn't know.
Barely. I got that one.
just multiply it by itself. And then we're just left with not the square root. So now we're gonna the shortcut, like, you're probably thinking this is harder to go 3 times 3, which is just the square root. Right? But I know that the square root is 9.
It wouldn't be square root, it would just end up being 6 because 2 times 3 is square root.
Okay, how do we do with this one? I know that is the 90 value for square root of 3. What did we have to do to go backwards to find x? Divide by 2. We're going to divide by 2 here. So when I divide 4 square root of 3 by 2, what is the only 2 numbers I can simplify? 4 and 2. So this becomes 2 square root of 3, which is my x value. Okay, and then we're using our x value, so we're doing 2 square root of 3 times the square root of 3. I'm going to leave my 2 alone because it can't be combined with anything. And what's the square root of 3 times the square root of 3? 3. So we're doing 2 times 3, which is 6. So, do we figure out where everything goes? Across from 30 is 2 square root of 3. And across from 60 is 6. So UR and RE. Okay, so that's the lesson for today. You have your prep work already when you walked in. So yeah, we're done.